Hi everyone and welcome to this painting video. In this video I want to show you how to paint a nebula. A painting like this is super fun and I just really wanted to share this process with you. In terms of the supplies I was using Winsor Newton Cotman watercolour paints along with Winsor Newton watercolour brushes. The paper is Canson 300 GSM hot pressed, and I also used some white acrylic paint along with a toothbrush and a Uni-Ball White Ink pen and a white Prismacolor pencil. But please don't worry too much if you don't have these exact supplies. Any watercolour paints and any art paper will be fine and you'll be able to create something similar to this. As you can see, I started off by placing a couple of different colours on the paper. I chose to add some nice looking reds and blues. And then I was making sure to also add lots of water to the paint so the colours will start mixing and bleeding into each other. While the paint was still wet, on the paint palette I started mixing a darker blue by adding some black paint to it. And then I started adding this colour around the outside, making sure to also add more water to help the colours mix. And this is what I really love about working on paintings like this. You can let the paint mix together and just do the work for you. Then, after this, around the outside edges of the paper, I started adding some black paint, continuing to let all these paints mix and create all these interesting shapes and effects. After waiting for this layer of paint to dry, it was then time to add the next layer. And for this, I recommend having more paint on your brush and less water. And then I tried to define some of the tops of some of the shapes that were created randomly with the paints all mixing together. And then after that, I dried the brush off and then faded the paint downwards. It was also at this point that I started using the white acrylic paint to add some bright patches, and then I faded it outwards into the wet watercolour paint to create some interesting cloud effects. I continued doing this across the painting, adding the darker patches of paint, then fading it downwards, and then adding the bright patches with the white paint. And the white paint was actually also great for adding a glowing effect behind some of the shapes, and this really helped to make some of the silhouettes stand out. I recommend not to worry about creating any specific details. The awesome thing about working on any paintings like this is that you can be super relaxed with it if you want to. And I found that it's actually a good idea to have some photos in front of you to help with inspiration. Next up, after waiting for the paint to dry again, it was time for the final layer of detail, and this is where I added the stars. This is where the toothbrush was quite useful. It isn't necessarily needed, but it definitely makes it quicker to add lots of stars to the scene. So, for this process, I added a bunch of white acrylic paint to the toothbrush, and then I used my thumb to flick the bristles towards the painting. Be careful if you try this. I made sure to cover my desk with paper so there was no risk of getting paint everywhere. It might be a good idea to even try this stage outside or something. It will still be absolutely fine if you don't use a toothbrush. Using a paintbrush works perfectly, and you will actually have more control over the placement of the stars. For my painting, after using the toothbrush method, I continued to refine the stars with the paintbrush, varying the sizes and adding a few larger ones. And then I also used the Uni-Ball White Ink pen and a white Prismacolor pencil for a few finishing touches. And then after that, this painting was completed. It's such a fun and exciting painting to work on. Letting the paint create all those interesting shapes is pretty awesome, and I highly recommend giving this a try. I really hope this video has helped out in some way, and be sure to let me know what you think, and also let me know if you have any suggestions for future videos. If you want to see more stuff like this, then feel free to subscribe, and any likes or shares on this video, they really mean a lot to me. If you want to follow my progress and see photos before I post these videos, then check out the links in the description box below to check out my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you all soon.